Welcome to Teal Talk, a podcast brought to you by the Ohio Alliance to End Sexual Violence. That's OAESV for short. I'm your host, Laurie Hurley, and in each episode, I'll speak with professionals in the field to dive deep into the intersectional issues that affect survivors in Ohio. Before we begin, I want to give a content warning that we will be discussing sexual violence and other issues that may be upsetting and triggering. If you need help, please call our resource line at 888-886-8388 during regular business hours, or the Ohio Sexual Violence Helpline 24/7 at 844-644-6435. Please take care of yourself. Hello, and welcome back to Teal Talk. I'm your host, Laurie Hurley, Resource and Engagement Manager here at OAESV. Today's episode is all about leadership and what it really takes to sustain this work for the long haul. I'm joined by Dr. Christi Scott Bartman. She's a senior lecturer at The Ohio State University, a U.S. Air Force veteran, a certified professional coach, the founder of Eyes Up Appalachia, an anti-human trafficking initiative, and also the founder of Basic Concepts, providing strategic consulting to nonprofits and educational institutions. Whether you're an executive director, advocate, supervisor, or someone newer to this field thinking about your own leadership journey, I can guarantee there's something in this episode here for you today. Good morning, Christi, and welcome to Teal Talk. I'm so excited to be chatting with you today. How are you this morning?
I'm doing great. I really appreciate the opportunity to be here.
Well, you are definitely not new to the OAESV space, but this is my first time in conversation with you. So I would love if you could share a little bit about your background and why this topic in particular is one that you're passionate about.
Most of you know me as the founder of Eyes Up Appalachia. So it's an anti-human trafficking initiative that works throughout the Appalachian counties. And I enjoy working with many of the people that are going to be listening to this call. And so it's truly a pleasure to be here. And some of you know that I have another hat. So I work with OSU and the John Glenn College of Public Affairs, and I teach in the Masters of Public Administration and Leadership program. And I do a lot with strategic management, leadership, development, and other areas. And so one of the things that I really enjoy doing, and it kind of goes to some of this, is using two sides of my brain. So there's a real passionate side, let's work with individuals that have a strong need and a strong passion. And then there's that other side. It's like, okay, let's think bigger, let's think broader, let's think, how we can take this forward. And so that's really what I'm going to talk to you about today. And what I want to bring to the table today is how we can move some of this forward as far as leadership, succession planning, those type of things. And I really look forward to doing that.
The second you said that you wear many hats, I was like, yeah, I feel like that's a very common phrase in this nonprofit space. And I think fits very well with the conversation we're about to have, because when you think about leadership in advocacy spaces, I feel like because this field is uniquely vulnerable to burnout and turnover, perhaps, engaging in some of those leadership development initiatives can be difficult. So I'd love to start just right there with this concept of turnover and burnout in this field. And what do you think makes it uniquely vulnerable to those?
It's one of those things that what makes you a wonderful person in this space also contributes highly to that burnout and it's your passion. The number one thing I think that so many of the individuals with which I work in this field bring is passion. You can't train that, teach that, create that. It's there, and that is what makes somebody so good in this field, no matter what position they hold in an organization. But that is also what causes burnout, because it creates such a time where you just don't want to say no. So many of the individuals with which I work, it's like, okay, yeah, I want to do that, or oh gosh, that's a good opportunity. Oh yes, I'd like to do that, and it just keeps going. And so not only does that affect the executive directors, but it also goes all the way down in the organization, all the way through the organization. That's one of the things that need to be considered. The group Nonprofit Lab has done some recent studies. They found that 95% of nonprofits are concerned with stress and burnout. And so it is something that's real. It's something that we have to look at. And so I wanted to talk about some of the things that I've heard from different organizations that seem to work or to help. And I fully realize that everybody can't do all these all the time. It just doesn't happen that way. But one of the things for me personally, flexibility is one of the biggest keys, because I don't mind working in the evening or on a weekend if I can take 2 hours on a beautiful day to go walk my dogs. And so, so I like that kind of give and take. And right now I don't have young kids, so that, qualify that. When I had young kids, I needed to be off at a certain time. I needed to get the kids. I had other ththings I had to do in the evenings and on the weekends. And so at that point in my life, I would have appreciated some solid boundaries where I knew how to plan. But everybody's different. It's the same with communication cutoffs. Right now, because I do still take advantage of that flexibility, I do some of my work on weekends, and I'm going to send those emails just so that I can get them into somebody else's box. But maybe that other person says, no, I am not checking emails until Monday morning, which is fine. But different people have, kind of a different way to look at that.
You mentioned that flexibility is key here. And I think something that a passionate person could run into is like holding their own boundary to be flexible. Because when you're in this field, we always say it's hard work. And there's this like mission driven pressure where, let me just check my phone one more time. Oh, I can send one more email, and you're looking at the clock, and then you're rushing in your own personal life. So yeah, it's like flexibility, but also holding yourself accountable to your own boundaries.
That's hard. I gotta say, I haven't cracked that one yet. But just to understand that you do need to pay attention to that. It's, you're not going to get it right every time. And there is no right, really. It's all situational, and it's all individual. But we can all try harder to make that a reality. For me, I am more relaxed once I get something done. I need to finish it and check it off. And so I don't mind working extra to get it done so that I can have that time where I can go, whew, because if I haven't gotten it done, I'm worrying all night and not being able to get it till the next morning, where I would rather have spent that extra half an hour, get it done, and I can relax and go enjoy my time. So different people look at this in different ways and handle it in different ways. And so part of what you need to do is, within your organization, is understand those personalities. When I did the leadership training for OAESV, one of the things we did at the very beginning was that personality, test. And it's not, the big ones where you have to pay a lot of money for and things like that. It's Adobe Creative, and it's fun just to see the different styles, but it does make you realize that there are different styles out there and different ways people manage, and not everybody is the same. So the earlier we understand that with the folks that we work with, the better off we'll be in that. Another thing that I really advocate for, and I do try to block this personally, is a block of time to really just think big. When I was teaching at American Public University System, we had a new president, and the board told her, you will take this afternoon off every week, go sit on the porch and think big things about the university. We all get so involved in the details, and those details, they just keep coming. But you've got to take a block of time to think larger, to think, how do we go from here to there? Not just, how do I go from here to tomorrow? How do I, where do I want to be next year? Things like that. And we really do need that block of time. And whether it's individuals or whether we take it as a group, say we take one afternoon off, and let's all sit down and brainstorm where we want to be in 5 years. Let's think about it. Let's talk about it. Let's think big. And it really helps to get everybody out of that minutia mindset and into that broader thing. Coordinate with your board members, use your board members. When there's high burnout, they need to know we're struggling here, in the organization. They need to know this. This should not come as a surprise when half your staff walks out the door. Your board should know that there are big problems, and we need to start thinking through this. And hopefully you'll start earlier, so you'll alleviate that opportunity, that big problem. And a staff just completely saying, okay, it's too much, I can't do it. Or the ED and the board is going one way and the staff is going another, and we haven't had that time to communicate. We haven't had that time to get everybody all on the same page. I know another one, a couple of organizations that I work with allow sabbaticals. In fact, they enforce sabbaticals. It's not only encouraged, but you will take a sabbatical after so many years. And a lot of those are those that work directly with survivors. And that secondary trauma is real. It's definitely hard. It is very difficult. It's hard on a daily basis. And between all the things that we can do for individuals that are in that situation, that trauma-informed, trauma-responsive care that we give to the clients, we need to also wrap around our staff, whether that takes the form of sabbaticals, whether that takes the form of, personal time off, whether it takes the form of, hey, I'm here if you need me, come get me if you need me, that type of thing. We need to do that. I have a couple of ideas I want to talk about. What, you had another question though. What was that?
No, what you said about sitting on the porch and thinking, where are we going to be in 5-10 years? That really struck me, because something you said was, we need to stop thinking about how are we getting from today to tomorrow and think beyond that. And I was like, wow, because in this field, there's so much, funding instability. There's emotional labor, it's crisis response. It quite literally is, are we going to have our lights on tomorrow? Just trying to get through the day to get to tomorrow. And yeah, I never really thought about how so much of us are living in this survival mode of, I just want to get to tomorrow. In my work specifically, I do a lot of creative work at OAESV. And I always tell my supervisor, creative work takes a long time. And I need just an hour of uninterrupted time to just let my brain process through everything and think big and think creatively. So I really resonate with what you shared there.
And your space is important too for that. We should all be thinking more creatively. Mm-hmm. We should all be thinking more innovatively, particularly in this time, because there's a financial concerns, and I might even use the word crisis right now for some of our organizations. And it is so easy to get just kind of enveloped in that and not be thinking further out as to what we can do with the resources. In fact, there was a financial sustainability toolkit that I just created with a number of other individuals to help people kind of get past that and get through that and think of other ways and innovative ways. And I can give you a link to that if you would like that. One of the things that I heard when I was doing the leadership series with OAESV, when we were doing the development day, that was coming up constantly, was, okay, our federal funding is a concern. We've got more than 35% coming in from one donor, which is the federal government. And so, how do we diversify? How do we look at different donors? How do we think outside the box? And that takes creativity and innovation. It really does. And it's something that you can't do. Okay, everybody come in the conference room. Let's do it now. I mean, it doesn't work that way. And so you do have to consider not only, thinking that way, but you have to consider the space in which you're thinking, get somewhere that's creative, get somewhere that is not restrictive and not reminding you, and the phone's not ringing constantly. So that's a great point and very important. A couple of the other things that I wanted to highlight, Foundation for Appalachian Ohio did a well-being toolkit, and it was actually for K through 12, but what they had in the back of it was how to work within your organization on some of these. And I really love a couple of these, and I wanted to share them. When you have your staff meetings, when you've got groups together, they're having staff meetings, there's a thing called Hope Huddle. So it is basically to talk to everyone, ask them, what's one thing you're hopeful about this week? Get people thinking along those lines. What's a small thing worth celebrating? And what's something you're working towards? And so instead of what went wrong, what are you going towards? What are you moving towards? So that's important. Recognition rituals. And a lot of us do this. Many times it's a, hey, so-and-so did this, or, we accomplished this, or this team did this. And so those things are really important. And, a clap out, things like that are really, they're small, and sometimes it seems even a little silly, but once it gets started, it gets ingrained and people really enjoy it. I really like this one. It's called a voice loop, and I use it in my classes. I use it with my capstone students, and I ask them, what's something that's working really well in the class? Because I designed the class. And so What's something that's working really well in the class? And then what's something that we could change about the class? And if you've developed a really great relationship and a great trusting relationship, that will give you the space that you need to be able to say, for them to be able to say, well, there's way too much group work in this. There's, this, that, and the other, whatever it is. And so that's important. And then one more that I really think we should add that we don't always see is, what do you need support with? Because that is where we can really do the best help, I think. There's so much that we need within your membership, within our organizations, and it is hard to bring that to the table all the time, every day. But if we can start working in some of these smaller things, it'll make a big difference.
I think a key point there was trust, because if you don't feel safe enough to voice like a concern, or, if someone's asking like, what's something we can improve, and then you don't feel like you're able to share perhaps a contrary opinion, you might just stay stuck where you are. So I'm wondering too, we talked about how when organizations are constantly responding to immediate needs, it can be difficult to think beyond the next crisis. And because a lot of organizations are operating in this survival mode that you've been mentioning, how does that impact long-term leadership development?
It does. It does.
I mean, I knew the answer to my question when I asked it.
I wish I could give you a better answer, but no, it seriously impacts it. Between the staffing and the capacity and the need, so many organizations are in that it just has to be done today. We've got a small staff. We've got to get this done. And it is exceptionally hard to break out of that. If there is any possible way that you can start doing small things like mentoring, shadowing, things like that, just small things to start initiating some of that leadership development. You mentioned the word trust. You pulled out the word trust. The other word that I probably will highlight is communication, because so many of us, particularly when we get in that frantic, where we're just getting the basic work done, barely, we don't communicate. And so the best thing you can do, particularly if you're in a management role, I'm a huge fan of management by walking around. And so, make yourself seen. Don't be, off here and everybody else is doing the work here and they never see you. Management by walking around, and that way you will see what the need is, and you will see how hard it is for individuals and what the stress level is. But they will also see you and hopefully bring it to your attention. And so that is extremely important. But the other aspect of that is if possible, if you can start working with mentoring some of these individuals, blocking an hour, at a time to just talk to somebody, and then bringing them into some other meetings. Obviously we'll have a big staff meeting, and many times not everybody comes to that. And sometimes not everybody can come because we've got cases going and crisis lines going and everything else. But make sure to include everybody in the plans, because that is part of what makes somebody feel like they want to be a part of an organization and that they're willing to kind of keep going here, just even though it's a hard time. Because if they feel like they're part of an organization and they're being heard, that communication piece is key. So just letting everybody know where we are. And so especially if you've got something coming that might help relieve some of this stress, some of the pressure. If something is changing in the future, they need to know about it. The same goes not only for your staff, but it's also up for your board as well. The board needs to know what's happening, and it will also be helpful to some of your staff if you can bring some of the staff to the board meetings. It gives ownership across the organization, and when somebody feels like they're part of it and they have ownership in it, it feels like less of a job, and it's more of a passion and more of a mission, and everybody can get on board with that. And then if they understand that there is actually a time frame, this is not going to go on forever, that's something that if we can possibly do, that's important. The other thing, we used to do this in the military periodically, and it was usually, unfortunately, after a major incident. So, a plane crash and something like that. And they would shut down all operations and schedule a safety day. Let's hopefully not wait for that to happen, something as egregious as that, but let's have a down day every now and then. Just as many operations as you can close down. And either, take the staff out to somewhere else, an activity. It doesn't have to be an expensive activity. Let's everybody go kayaking. Let's everybody go hiking. Let's everybody do something that, go paint ceramics, whatever you want to do, to not only allow everybody to breathe, but, and it's, you can chalk it up as team building as you want, but that's really, in this instance, it is more about just breathing and just taking a breath. And so some of those things that, we can do to help that and keep people engaged in the organization. And then if we can possibly integrate some shadowing, some mentoring, some cross training, that is going to help bring through that leadership progression thread that we want to bring through without disrupting major operations. It's, it's something that has to be scheduled. It's something that sometimes you just can't get it in there. But when you can, it's really important, because that's going to keep people.
Mm-hmm. I'm wondering how executive directors or even just supervisors, managers can identify emerging leaders early, especially with staff who may not consider themselves leadership material. I'm thinking of staff who, first join an organization and they're a hotline advocate, and in their mind, they're just going to be an advocate forever, which we are all advocates in some capacity. But I feel like there could be a lot of imposter syndrome there, or this thought that like the executive director will never leave, so there would never be an opportunity for me to move up. So yeah, how can we like emphasize leadership?
I really like that. A lot of the time you can tell. Mm-hmm. I mean, I have students that many times I would put in any role. I would hire them without assigning a role even, because I can see that they have what it takes. They have the initiative, they have the creativity, they have the innovation. And you heard me say all those soft skills. I didn't say anything about working tech or doing that. These are soft skills. When you hire a person that they can learn whatever needs to be done. And sometimes, obviously, if we've got a case manager, they need a certain skill set to bring in. They need a certain qualification. But generally, you can see when somebody has that drive and initiative and interest in the organization, and it will behoove you in the long run to allow them to expand on that. So sometimes you can see it, and that's the person you want to hire. That's one of the things that kind of kills me about hiring processes, when you've got to ask the same questions to all the candidates and that, because there are some candidates that you just know this person is a great fit, and you're going to bring them in and they're going to do amazing things for the organization, but it's going to be in a real loose way, not as specific as, okay, you're a case manager, you're a crisis, you're this, you're this. And so when we have those people, when we find those people, make sure we offer them opportunities. And by opportunities, I mean not only training within the organization in whatever job they're fulfilling at the time, but opportunities outside. I think it's so important that we encourage individuals to go to not only like conferences in the subject matter that they're working in, but conferences in other things that they may be able to bring back. Like there's like Google and some of those others offer some innovative conferences that are really interesting. I mean, for your position, I mean, for you, the conferences that, I would send you to are big creative conferences, things that you're going to look at these new ideas and you're going to get really inspired and come back and bring that new life back to OASV. I mean, so that for you, that's what I'd be looking at for you, something that's big target to make you think big and bring it back. And so that's one of the things that we can do for the ones that don't see themselves as leaders. That series we did for OASV, there was a big, broad intersection of people that were there. And many of them, one of our sections was budget. And many of them didn't have a budget, didn't work with budget, didn't want to work with budget, but they're exposed to it. They've seen it now. They have some idea of what it is. They went back, hopefully, to their organization and talked to them about their budget, so they better understood it. Now, do they want to be a CFO? Probably not. Can they now understand, what the organization is seeing? Can they read the 990? Can they, understand the assets and liabilities, what that means within their organization? And so they can be a bigger part. and they can have a better understanding. So I think that's really important. And for those that don't necessarily see themselves going in one way, and maybe the executive director sees them going in another way, or needs them to go in another way, or sees their talents in another way. Again, I saw it more in the military than I've seen it in our organizations. But let's say you took a fighter pilot and put them as the head of safety. Now that fighter pilot's probably just going to be pissed because they don't want to be out of the cockpit. They don't think safety, that's for somebody else, but what that does is, as a fighter pilot, you're not exposed to supervision until way late in your career. The head of safety supervises a lot of people, and they cross with all the operations on a base. And so the senior executive may say, I am looking at you for later leadership potential, but right now I need you to get some exposure. I need you to get some, get your feet wet in some of these areas, and I'm going to put you over here. And so I think as long as there's good communication there, that's important. Because maybe you didn't come into the organization to do X, but that's a need right now, and you can fulfill that need. Everybody has talents they're bringing to the table. Recognize those talents, number one. In business, they call it the Peter Principle, promote to the level of incompetence. Not everybody needs to be in every position, and not everybody wants to be in every position. And you don't want me doing tech. I mean, you really don't. What we want to do is to look at the talents that people bring to the table and help them develop the talents and get them to the point where they say, oh, I can do that. And so that's where we want to be.
I really like how you're emphasizing leadership development as a strength that an organization can do, because I do think that we focus a lot on burnout and turnover being high in this field. And that's not to discredit that at all. Like, it's definitely real. But at the same time, there are so many people who work in this field and have worked in this field for decades and hold a lot of that knowledge. And I think having this abundance mindset and thinking like investing in leadership within my organization is actually a worthwhile investment. Like, we don't have to operate under a scarcity mindset of, what's the point in investing in this if all these people might leave?
We know people are going to move up and move out and move on and sometimes come back. You just never know in that situation. But it is so important to not only develop people internally and put that effort into them, knowing that maybe some of them are going to leave, but to celebrate their new positions. And ultimately, this is a small group of people that work in this area. When you look at the grand scheme of things, this is a close community. This is a very close community. And you will end up working with those same individuals likely in the future. And so it's really important that we have that mindset that I want the best for you, period. And I think if we continue to develop individuals with simply that in mind, I want the best for you. And while you're in this organization, I'm going to make sure that I can try to support you as best I can between what money I have and what time I have. But I'm going to try to support you as best I can, knowing that while you're here, you'll give that right back to me. Mm-hmm. I will support you. And if I do that, I know you will support me and my organization and this organization. But if your life takes a different turn, if the organization takes a different turn, I will also support you. Write you letters of reference. I will do this, or whatever it is that you need, because we've developed a relationship. We've developed mutual respect, and that's how I want to operate. That's how I want to be as a person. Am I going to be really upset if one of my good people leave? Oh yeah. And honestly, oh my gosh, sometimes when there's an executive director turnover in one of our organizations, and I've worked with that person for a long time, it's just like, it's, you have that relationship, but somebody new comes along. Okay, I just need to take a step back, let them know what I can do to help in any way, and then give them some time to get their feet wet, and then see if there's any other ways we can work together, continue, start working together and build that relationship. It'll be a different relationship. There's different personalities. but we can do that. And so within an organization, when I, lose somebody that's extremely valuable, it is hard and it hurts. And I'm happy for them, but I know there's a big hole to fill. We need to check our biases and check our expectations, because different people come in and they bring different things to a position. And the person that is going to replace that position is not going to be that person that I had this great relationship with. It's going to be a different person. And so I need to step back and not only give them some room, but I need to try to understand what motivates them, what are their talents, how are we going to best work together, because it may be different. While yes, I will preach all day that you need to encourage the folks that work with you to be their best selves, no matter whether that's with you or somebody else. In reality, it's not easy.
I love that so much. I love this concept that leadership development is how we sustain this work. If people are leaving organizations to go to other organizations, that is one thing, versus them leaving this field entirely because they're so burnt out that they just go work for, marketing at a makeup store or something. Because it's like, when we invest in people, when we preserve this knowledge and create pathways for people to become future leaders, we're strengthening this entire movement. And I think that's so powerful. Like, we have to believe that as long as people are staying in this mission-driven work and the fire for that work is still there, all the investment in them is worthwhile because it's helping our mission, even if it's not at our specific organization,
You make a good point there. You make a very good point there. And just to give you an example, so one of the things that I do as a volunteer is I'm a puppy raiser for Canine Companions. And Canine Companions provide service dogs free of charge to individuals that truly need a service dog. They also provide facility dogs. And so one of the things that I do with Canine Companions is I'm a train-the-trainer for the prison program. And so I co-raise a dog with a prisoner. And I also go in every other week and teach them to teach the dogs. And so when I was able to hand that dog's leash over to 2 victims advocates in Kansas to work with children and victims, that was a huge full circle moment for me, because of all the work that I do. Even though I don't work directly with survivors, I work with a lot of survivors and a lot of agencies that do, knowing that the prisoner put so much time and effort into this dog. And now that dog is going to go help victims. I mean, that kind of renews your energy. And then at the graduation, they do a big graduation. And sometimes, you think, oh my gosh, another ceremony. But then you get there, and one of the dogs went to a young boy that had many diagnoses. And the father got up there and spoke, not a dry eye in the house. And just hearing that every now and then really gives you that energy to keep going. And so I think it's really important for us in our organizations to bring those moments forward, because not everybody gets to hear those stories and those successes. And I think it's key that we stay closer to clients. Depending on the size of the organization, you can be way removed from who we serve.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're in finance, it's just as important for you to hear what we do and how that impacts individuals as it is for you to make sure we stay in the black. And so, part of that is our responsibility to bring that forward, because I know that when I hear those things, it just, it makes my heart proud. It just remotivates me. Another idea that I was thinking about when we started talking about this, about how to keep individuals engaged and give them some ownership and keep organizations sustainable, is that many times just hearing some of these motivational speakers are pretty darn good. And many times, we go, and I know you're all a lot like me, you're very utilitarian and realistic. Okay, I need to learn as much as I can learn about this one topic that I really need to know about. And so we're going to conferences, we're going to, doing this, and it's all about what we're doing on a daily basis. Maybe something easier to do, and just maybe for that little downtime that will help individuals in the organization. Just as an example, I know Ohio Hotel and Lodging Association does big conferences every year, and they're really supportive of anti-human trafficking and other efforts, but they bring in a motivational speaker usually as the first person. We don't necessarily need to be attending the Hotel and Lodging Association conference, but maybe, and I bet a lot of money Joe Savarese would do this, maybe we ask him if our staff can just attend that first session for free. And that'll get our staff out of the office. That'll get them in front of a really top-notch motivational speaker, because they pay their folks. They pay for good folks, and it will give them, just kind of a break and something to just reinvigorate that motivation. So I think all those things are really important.
Yeah, and honestly, it ties back to the ideas you were sharing in the beginning. I'm thinking about the team building activities, or, ending a staff meeting with sharing out staff wins and hopeful moments. And I know that sometimes when you're in the weeds or you're having a bad day, you're like, I just want to be out of this meeting. I have so many things to do. I don't want to hear about this. Why am I painting a clay penguin with my supervisor? Like, these are all things we do at OAESV. And I'm thinking, if we were to remove all of those moments of glimmer, I would feel the lack of them. Like, perhaps in the moment when I'm like, I'm so busy, I don't have time to have a shout out. But in reality, if that shout out time wasn't there, I would be missing it without knowing what I'm missing.
That's a very good point. And what I like about particularly the shout outs is you're shouting out somebody else. Mm-hmm. Not only you, but somebody else as well. And that, it's like, wow, they did see that. Somebody saw that. Somebody saw that I made that effort to do that. And I think that is such a little thing you can do that brings a big reward to somebody, that really makes a difference to somebody. And I love that.
Yeah. And, filling someone else's cup also fills your own.
And that is a lot of why we do what we do as well. I mean, a whole lot of why we do what we do. That's a great point.
Well, Christi, thank you so much for sharing your insight and spending some time with me this morning to chat all things leadership and burnout. This was such a fun conversation.
I really appreciate it. It's certainly something I think about all the time. The organizations with which I work right now is a tough time. It really is not an easy time to be in this field. And we need to rely on each other. We need to, one of the other things that I'll kind of end with is a concept called boundary spanning. And so if you've got an individual that wants to learn more about things, help facilitate them just by setting up a meeting with either a strategic partner so they can learn what the roles of the strategic partner are, or with somebody in your organization, particularly if you've got a bigger organization. If they want to learn about finance, let them go shadow finance for a little bit. And, you can manage the time, but organizations with which you team, your other stakeholders, a board member, just any of that whole arena in which you work, that if they can do a little boundary spanning, that's not networking. They're not going out looking for another job. It's understanding the whole continuum with which you work. And so if I'm referring clients to somewhere else, maybe I want to go spend a day somewhere else, wherever that is, just so I understand what's there so that I can either speak more intelligently about it, or if I need to, I can pick up that phone and call that person. I know that person, and that makes a world of difference. My husband is fond of saying, an emergency is never a time to exchange business cards.
Yeah.
So, that's, when you need something, you know who to call. You've met them, and maybe it's in behavioral health, maybe it's somewhere else. Those things are really important. Joining coalitions that bring in a lot of different members to understand what is available in the area, what can help. And so those type of things, that boundary spanning is a good way to really not only kind of refresh yourself and see different things and your work from a different perspective. So like, okay, so, you're going to call me with this person, but now I go over and talk to mental health and behavioral health. And they say, well, it would really help me if you did this, this, and this. Okay, that's easy for me to do. I just didn't know it. And so it just makes for a good exchange. And honestly, I have found the groups with which we work to be some of the most positive, the most affirming people. And it struck me because they work with such need and such trauma on a daily basis, but the people that we work with are some of the most positive, affirming individuals. The support network I have, which is a lot of this network, is amazing. I mean, truly amazing. I've never seen it before in any of my other jobs. I mean, this is the most supportive group I have ever seen. And just reach out. I mean, reach out to, if you're an ED, reach out to some of the other EDs. You're going to be having the same problem, talk it through, reach out to some of these other organizations. If you're at any level within your organization, learn what those other organizations do. It's just so important. And it is such a supportive group. I'm so honored and pleased to be a part of it. And so thank you for having me on today.
Thank you so much. If anyone wants to, stay in touch with you or anything that you do, feel free to plug away.
You're always welcome to reach out. christi.bartman@me.com. Always there to help. Happy to help in any way I can. Connect you with resources. We do have that financial sustainability guide that we have out. It will not only help in innovative ways, ideas for grants, but grant build kits. It'll help you assess your financial sustainability and prioritize what you need to work with. And if you're thinking about a strategic retrenchment, what programs I need to back off on, what programs I need to expand, that type of thing. So that's out there as well. But certainly I'm here to help in any way I possibly can.
A huge thank you to Christi for sharing her practical insights for sustaining leadership in advocacy spaces. One thing that stood out to me throughout this entire conversation is that leadership development isn't just about preparing for turnover. It's about investing in people, strengthening organizations, and sustaining the movement itself. If this episode resonated with you, consider sharing it with a colleague, supervisor, board member, or someone who just needs a little nudge. I will link the resources that Christi shared today in our show notes, so be sure to check those out. And you can learn more about OAESV and our work at oaesv.org. Thanks again for listening, and we'll see you next time. Thanks for listening to Teal Talk. I hope you enjoyed our deep dive into intersectional issues affecting survivors in Ohio. If you like what you heard, subscribe and consider leaving us a 5-star rating and review. Recommend us to a friend and follow us on Instagram and Facebook at OAESV. If you'd like to learn more about us and the services we offer or sign up for our email list, visit oaesv.org. And remember, we're here to help. Feel free to call our resource line at 888-886-8388 during regular business hours, or the Ohio Sexual Violence Helpline 24/7 at 844-644-6435. See you next time.